Yay! Hello, everybody. My name is Renee Vidor, and I am the coach in the Winner Circle, founder of the Winner Circle. And if we don't know each other yet, then please let me know who you are down in the comments and let's get introduced. And I have with me Coach Ryan. I'm going to let him introduce himself. And if he doesn't do a good job, because I know he's humble, then I'm going to help. But let us know down in the comments where you're from, where you're watching. If you're watching live, let us know. So Ryan, go ahead, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Renee. My name's Ryan. I am the transformational shepherd, if you will, which is essentially a long way of saying that my purpose in life is to see into the heart of who you are that you don't see, to pull that up to the surface with you, and then equip you with something to do with that. And so, essentially, I teach personality typing via the Enneagram Personality typing. I then partner that personality typing with other communicative disciplines like body language observation, the neuroscience of the construction of your emotions, proactive decision, any type of leadership, communication, skill, and discipline out there. I weave that together so that you're able to not just react to life, because that's not what we're here to do. We're not just here to just roll with the punches per se. We are here to proactively design our life in a way that's fulfilling and purpose driven. So been doing this for about 20 years now. It is my life's work. I will die doing this. This is what God has called me to do.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, you did a good job. I was afraid that you would not share some of that. And I just, I've only known Ryan now for, less than 6 months, I would say, I think.
Yeah,
But it's interesting how God brings people together. I want to give a little bit of the history here. I had been already the winner circle has been together since August of 2020, and God gave me a vision a while back, and I knew little pieces of it, but I really didn't know the whole vision yet. And if you are a Christian entrepreneur or an organizational leader or a ministry leader, or you're doing something that you know that God has you doing, let me know down in the comments what that is, because oftentimes I believe that we don't really know and we just have little tiny glimpses. That's how it works for me. It might be different for others, but he gave me this glimpse and I saw pieces of, okay, this is going to be different coaches of different expertises coming together. And it's going to be a level up to really help people be able to be who they're created to be, do what they're designed to do, which there's that professional component, so that they can win at life and make their impact. And I knew that it was going to include the faith realm. And as a Christian, that is, literally, I can't separate that, at all, as well as the personal realm and the professional realm, because the way that many of us are wired are entrepreneurs. So while the winner circle is not specifically just for professionals or just for entrepreneurs or whatnot, is for any motivated person that wants to win at life, this thing was going to be different. And so when Ryan and I got to meet, it was actually through our mutual friend, Jeff. So Ryan was a client of Jeff's, and I believe you both have done work together. And when I was sharing with Jeff, I know I'm supposed to build this thing, and I'm pretty sure it's a mastermind. I'm supposed to collectively bring people together. And what I'm sensing is that when it comes to the personal side of things, we don't really know ourselves well enough. We need to learn more about who we were created to be. And I study the Bible, and I do a lot of coaching, faith coaching. I bring a lot of different elements. My background is psychology. So of course, I'm bringing all of this, which God's the author of psychology, by the way, but putting all this together. And I'm like, but I would love to see something even deeper, something that's quantifiable. And Jeff is like, and I told him that perhaps it would be, maybe it would be like a disc coach, or it would be, and I'm looking at these different assessments. And Jeff's like, I think I know the person. Let me connect you and you can go from there. And Ryan, oh my gosh, when we first met, I'd like to know, what was it for you like when I started sharing what I was envisioning, what did that elicit in you?
Mm, mm. You know, it. I always say that the Holy Spirit has a tendency to speak to me through conversations, relationships, and weird things happening. that's
Right.
that's kind of, again, been pretty congruent, consistent throughout my life. And so when we started to talk and when we first met, there was such a resonation in not just God's calling on your life, but how you were executing that, how you wanted to execute that, what conduits you wanted to use. Additionally, a very similar life background as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've experienced very similar things. And so it was just those three things started to line up for me, you know, conversation, the relationship, and weird things happening. And I get to that place where it's like, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. So let's explore this, you know,
Uh-huh.
let's see where this is going. And the more I kind of drilled down into what you wanted to create, and the more we worked on, you know, who you are and your self-awareness
Yes.
and communication, I mean, it was just too difficult to ignore that God was putting those pieces together, you know. So that's kind of what I experienced within, goodness, I would say within the first like 10 minutes of us talking. It was kind of a blindside moment for me where it's like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, you know,
What's
Holy Spirit.
happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had the same experience, but this, like, I wanted you to share that. And I'm so glad that you shared that, like, even my growth in working with you, because that is part of what we're talking about here today.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. As a person that is pretty well self-aware, I mean, honestly, that is one of my giftings, is
Mhm.
being self-aware. And yet I've learned so much through the coaching that you've provided.
Mm.
And so, just to give all of our viewers a background, and if you're joining us just now, let us know down in the comments where you're from, what you do. I know I see here, oh gosh, look at this. Michelle, she helps moms of addicted loved ones who are stuck in guilt, chaos, and
Mm.
shame.
That's awesome.
Whew, yes.
Mhm.
Oh my
Mm.
gosh. Like, I know a little bit about Michelle's, what she's doing, and it's amazing. And when I look at how I have been able to be self aware, and yet I had many blind spots, and I still do. We all do. We're on a journey. And I started to experience what Ryan's gifts are. It makes such a positive impact in my business,
Mhm.
in my relationships, in my, even in my parenting,
Mhm.
as well as my spiritual life. So even in the short amount of time that I've known Ryan, I've seen, and I should have just even, I didn't think about it. I should have planned and shown you a couple of different, like, measurable things for those that are, left brain analytical. I'm more of the
Mm.
right brain person. But even in those first 10 minutes, Ryan was able to read so much about me that that's just his gift. He's not some woo woo spiritual, like magic man or something, but that's a gift of his. And he studied a lot of this and skills, but he was able to read things about me. For instance, and I'm totally fine with you sharing some of this. I think it would be a good thing. And I'm very authentic and vulnerable and whatnot, but be nice. But either way, I would like for you to share, what are some of those things that you were able to notice about me in a short amount of time. And let me preface it with what we did first. I have it right here because I actually utilize it, but it's buried because that's my personality. But is my Enneagram report,
Mhm.
and it's a tool. This is
Mhm.
just a tool. It's not some kind of thing we worship or an idol or anything like that. But
Mhm.
to get a little bit of insight, and when I got my report back, I was like, oh gosh, Ryan, I literally, the top four were only one point apart. And I'm like,
Mhm.
Ryan, I must be either a hot mess or something's up. But when we were going back and forth between two numbers,
Mhm.
um, you were able to do some things that wasn't telling me anything but helping me to self-discover. Can you explain a little bit of what you do? And you can use me as an example, or you can just talk generically, but how are you able to do that? And what is going on in the process of the person who is receiving the benefits of that?
Mm. Mhm. So what I generally do, and we'll just kind of go through the client experience. You, everyone else, Jeff, I see that you're on here. Yes, you do help me stay on track, and I greatly appreciate that.
You're so funny.
So, for example, Jeff is an Enneagram 6, which is titled the Loyalist, and his superpower is connectivity and glue. So he's very good at keeping people together, bringing them in. Sixes often have a guy for everything. Oh, you need something? I know a guy, for that. And so Jeff, my Enneagram 3, his 6 is really good at keeping my 3's flightiness and flakiness, and ability to kind of be like a feather in the wind. He's really good at keeping me grounded. And so in the work that you mentioned earlier that Jeff and I have done, we have kind of gone back and forth, Proverbs 27:17, which is one of your favorite verses, Renee, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. And Jeff and I definitely have been sharpening each other. And so the client experience in general is, what I do is I offer the Enneagram test, which is provided by the EnneagramInstitute.com. And so I'm licensed, so to speak, if you will, to facilitate that test. So you take that test, which you did, Renee, and then I get the results, and the results are broken down into, the Enneagram is 1 through 9. Those are the numbers. And so, and it doesn't mean that 1 is less than 9. It just, yep, there you go. And generally speaking, the packet that you get, or that I get in my test results, is that it's anywhere from 20 to 30 some odd pages, because it is a breakdown. It's a very analytical and logical and scientific breakdown. Now, what those numbers give me is I'm able to see your past, your present, and your future. Now, hear that. I mean, your past, present, and future just through numbers, and that's not just
numerology. Just saying.
Right.
In case someone jumps in right now, we're not talking numerology. Okay.
You're right.
Keep going.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And we're able to see, essentially what your personality gravitates towards, a profile, if you will. And for you, Renee, you have two main numbers, your 2 and your 8, that show themselves, and as we dig into that, we're able to, in that self-discovery process, I'm asking questions. I'm not telling you what you are, even though I see a lot in there. I'm not telling you where you came from. I'm not telling where you are, and I'm not telling you where you're going. I'm asking questions to kind of trigger the neural processing. This is where we move from Enneagram into other disciplines. I'm triggering the neural processing, the cognitive thinking, critical thinking in your brain. Your brain is choosing on its own to drill down into the answers, potential answers. That self-discovery is then guided by me.
Yes.
So that's where the shepherd comes in. It's if you start veering off into a place that is not congruent, okay, not cohesive, not predictable in the clustering of the discipline of the Enneagram, the discipline of body language, the discipline of the neuroscience of emotions, I put all of those together to help you truly discover where you are in that moment.
That was well said. And that was exactly what I was thinking in terms of, I didn't know how to put it into words, but having that experience, and coming from someone who does have a lot of experience in different certifications and identity and, personality and, background in psychology and all this, it was something different for me to work with you on this, and not just Enneagram. I mean, like, it's beyond that, like you're saying, to have someone who was working individually and within a short amount of time, able to ask questions that I didn't ask myself before. So that was powerful. And something that you said about the neural pathways and how our brains worked. God designed our brains to be tapped into more than what we allow for them to.
Yeah.
So I think that this would be helpful for our viewers. And first, I want to know, everyone who's watching live, thanks for being here. Let us know, do you happen to know your Enneagram? Do you know the number that your personality that you typically, at least that if you've taken a test, or maybe you've done something through your church or something like that, what is your Enneagram number if you know it? And we'll start looking at some of those. But even as I was going back through 2, the helper, which was my top score, and 1 point below it, the challenger,
Mm-hmm.
my second one there, it was a lot of inner turmoil of bring, and Ryan didn't say this or do this. It was inside, and God wanted me to go through this. He wanted me to have an experience that was tapping in to where he wanted me to peel off some layers.
Mm-hmm.
And in discovering I'm actually a 2, which Ryan, did you ever have any question, or did you pretty much know? Because I don't know.
Well, there was a brief moment where I was kind of like, I was a little on the fence, because you have a paradox of expression where, the 2 as the giver there's a lot of action and a lot of nurturing, a lot of helping in that, which comes from a lot of the way you connect people. 2s are very, their superpower is ESP. So they know what people want and they know what they need before the person does. There's a lot of empathic skill there. However, your 8 showed up as well. And the 8 is the strongest number in the discipline of the Enneagram, is the most powerful number. If you equate the numbers to how they engage with our globe, 8s move the globe. 8s propel that spin, so to speak. And so there was a lot of directness in you as well. There was a lot of self-awareness. That's where a lot of your self-awareness comes. 8s are the only number in the discipline that immediately gravitate towards their number and say confidently, that's me. And so additionally, you had a collision of your professional expression as well. And so, so there's a personal type of profile that we have, and then a professional one. And you show up in your professional one often as an 8.
And that was huge. Like, I think that's something that is helpful for some of our viewers here who I know are Christian entrepreneurs and ministry leaders. How we show up. I'm going to be honest. There have been times where I've questioned myself over my life, and I've asked things like, all right, God, did you screw up a little bit here? Because like I'm not bipolar, and yes, I have been tested because I had to be when I went in for my ADHD assessment, and I'm not. But I'm this way here, and I'm this way here. But I am living what I feel is my true authenticity. So tell me, did you mess up, or what's going on here? And with working with Ryan and learning more of who God created me to be, it has been revolutionizing my business, because now I have more confidence in knowing that, oh, it's okay for me to show up as my 8 professionally. And at the same time, I'm learning that sometimes I'm showing up in that way in my personal life, and that may not be the appropriate time. So, and I have much more to go. Ryan and I just started working, like I said, and I didn't officially say this, but I'm going to now. So Ryan is one of the 4 coaches that has joined the Winner's Pace Mastermind. And so we've been trying this out together. So Ryan, Coach Jeff, Coach Sally, we have the spiritual growth coach, we have the business coach, we have the transformational shepherd here. As you heard him explain that, it is so true. Making these transformations on the personal level, which affects our businesses, our ministries, it affects our relationship with God, and it affects our personal life in every way, our relationships with other people, spouses, parenting, and even our dogs, by the way. And I'll just give a little plug.
So I was wondering if you were going to add that.
I should. I didn't think about it until it just popped out. But so Ryan actually is a not a professional dog trainer, but a professional dog owner trainer, basically. Yeah, we should put a link down in the comments after this. But 1812 is one of his companies and businesses, and then Pack Leader is the other. So go follow him there. Amazing work that he does. But because this impacts so many different elements, as a believer and as someone who is called, not everyone is, but as someone who's called to go out and make an impact through business and in other people's lives through businesses and such as well, I realize in this short amount of time, I have improved so much, and he is such a perfect completion of God putting together this puzzle of the PACE mastermind. Because when we have all of these elements together, which is countercultural, by the way. I mean, as a believer, aren't we oftentimes said, or like it's said, we need to keep religion and politics and all that away from our business. We need to make sure that our personal life stays away from our business. And we also need to make sure that our business stays away from our personal life. But if you're watching, and I see many of you are here live, if that is a struggle for you, say struggle down in the comments. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Why is it a struggle? We were not designed to be that way. Mm-hmm. God did not design us to be compartmentalized in such a way that causes our entire being to be stretched apart. So Ryan, and you helping me to understand more about how God created me to show up in different areas. And you didn't tell me. You're not here like just blasting and saying, oh, you're doing this wrong, or that's never the thing.
No.
You're pulling things out, and that's biblical. It's Proverbs. I forget because that's me in Numbers, but basically it says that a wise counsel draws out the deep waters within another person. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do as coaches. That's what we do as Sally with the spiritual growth coach. And yep, we have some strugglers down there that, I mean, all of us, this is not to point any fingers. It is a hard world to be a Christian entrepreneur.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit more about, obviously we just talked about, okay, so first things first, you pull out a report, mm-hmm. right? I mean, mm-hmm. you have someone fill out and they do a report. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that is included in the PACE Mastermind. So that's going to be something that every single member gets. We are only taking 10 participants. So it's not something where it's going to be a massive amount of people.
Right.
But when you do that report, and then people start to learn a little bit about themselves.
I see. I know where you're going.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll make it simple because I'll just make it really simple. So how over the 6-month program, and this is a little different than what you do on your individual coaching because we mm-hmm. are combining everything, and you do combine things already with what you mm-hmm. do. But how over the 6-month PACE program are you going to, what are some topics that you're going to be able to pull out and help people while they have this neat little thing in their hands?
Well, the first thing I want to kind of highlight, and this is an interesting element to your self-discovery, is I mentioned earlier that Enneagram 8s are generally the only number that confidently gravitate towards their numbers. It's why mm-hmm. I teach it last, because if I teach it first, if I'm going through the numbers and I teach it first, they know their number and they're done. You know, mm-hmm. I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to know any. Yeah, exactly. But generally what happens is we start going through the interpretation and the self-discovery process, and the person starts saying no. They feel uncomfortable. You know, it's bringing things to the surface of who they are. And they're like, that's not my number. That's not who I am. Mm-hmm. That can't be who I am. I did the same thing. You know, I'm Enneagram 3, the shapeshifter, and I did not like the 3 initially. And I actually tried to live like a 2, you know, and so
you're wearing a mask.
Yeah, there you go. And so that's what happens is when we feel exposed and we have that vulnerability, we don't see mm-hmm. vulnerability as in strength initially. We see it as we're opening, you know, we're putting the drawbridge down and we're opening the gate to the castle and we're letting the Trojan horse in, so to mm-hmm. speak, you know, and we don't want to do that, you know. So there's that initial kind of hesitation.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I can totally see that.
Yeah. But then when we get past that, when we start to really take ownership over who we really are, and we start to see the I guess if you want to call them the positives, you know, yes. I kind of subscribe to, you know, there's some Enneagram teachers that teach, my teacher, she uses this rhetoric where it's this narrative of the greatest thing about you is the worst thing about you. Mm-hmm. You know, and like, again, like a 2, the giver, the greatest thing about them is their ESP and their ability to give. But the worst thing is that they struggle with boundaries, mm-hmm. you know, and they struggle yes. with boundaries, putting boundaries in place for themselves. Not to throw you under the bus, Renee.
No, again, what you're saying is so true that it's not, I used to think of these things as a weakness. But
There you
you
go.
reframed that for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, as you're saying this, and if anyone feels like they have weaknesses, I mean, share weakness down below. What is your weakness that
Mm-hmm.
you think that you have? And then,
Yes.
so that was just one thing, but yeah, keep going because this is so good.
So we move past that hesitation into starting to take more ownership over who we are. And I
Mm.
don't say the greatest thing about you, is the worst thing about you. I say that it is you. Okay. You're either productive or unproductive.
Uh-huh.
You're constructive or destructive with the way you are. And so as we start to unpack that, what we're learning, and these are just broad stroke concepts right now, what
Mhm.
we're learning is not just your core number and who you are, but then what happens when you get stressed.
Yes.
How does your communication change? How does your behavioral tendencies change when you're stressed? Because when we're pressurized and when we're stressed, our whole central nervous system, our whole biochemistry changes, our psychology changes, and we all start moving to different tendencies physically, actionably, mentally, psychologically, emotionally. I'll throw myself into the bus. As a 3, when I get stressed, I experience a ton of shame, a
Mm.
ton of guilt and worthlessness that is just a lie, and I turn into something visually and audibly that sounds and looks completely different than what you're experiencing right now. So what do we do when we're stressed? Okay. And then how is that, not productive in our relationships or in our business,
Mhm.
and then what do we do when we're in health? When we go to these great places where we feel peaceful and we just really feel the abundance of God's overflowing, love and unconditional love and strength and wisdom and patience and all those great things that Scripture teaches us. We also have tendencies there. And then here's the big thing. I love this one. It's one of my favorite things. You mentioned it. I think you mentioned it earlier when we were just talking casually. You used the word offended,
Oh yeah.
and the Enneagram personality typing discipline allows for us to have enough self-awareness to where we can see other people's differences, the way they're wired differently, the way they engage differently, and not be offended by that. So
Oh,
imagine as a business owner, you know yourself so well, okay, and you're so comfortable with who God made you to be, that your worth and your value and the love that you have for yourself and the love that God has for you cannot be penetrated by someone else's crazy.
that is so important. And you just brought it out. I was telling you that before this call about how that's one thing that I've really been working at and learning. And I didn't even realize that part of that is through learning more about others. So, how important, even if you already know your Enneagram or you already know, um, you feel like you know yourself well,
Mhm.
the value of learning about other people and of learning what Ryan is here to teach is so powerful because what about our customers? What about our clients? What about the spouse or the kid that you're dealing with before you're dealing with your customers and clients that carry on into your personal life or your
Mhm.
business? Again, remember they're all together. But
Mhm.
all of these things are so interconnected that it's so powerful not just to know ourselves, as we talked about, know thyself,
Mhm.
but to have the self-awareness. Yes, that's great. I need that and I need to keep improving that. But also to know other people well enough and to be able to see them the way that God created them instead of the way that
Mhm.
we see them sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm. Our
Because we
human lenses are not very good when it comes to God's lenses.
it's so true. And not to mention as well that like our my viewpoint has changed since I've learned, about the different other types. And sometimes
Mhm.
I can't just sit there and be like, okay, so what number are you in? And earlier I saw Sunil, and
Mm.
Sunil, shout out to him. He's over in England. No, he's not. I'm sorry. He's in the UK. Tell us exactly where you're from, Sunil, because you know me, I forget details. But he says that he's a 9 wing 1 and
Mhm.
his wife is a 9 wing 8.
Mhm.
So just share, because you're like a whiz on this. So when you have two nines together, what are some of the productive and what are some of the unproductive things?
All right. And I was going to bring this up. I was like chomping at the bit. I was about to interrupt you
You
because I was
should do
excited
it.
about it. Well, when we have a nine spouses, when we have a 9-wing-1 and a 9-wing-8, it's very fascinating because the nine superpowers perspective and peace and harmony. So their core, the core of their personalities are going to be driven to not be impacted by the environmental stimulants of the world and the craziness of the world. They want internal harmony. And so they're going to want harmony in their relationship. However, it creates potential friction, potential issues in their communication, because a 9 with a 1 wing is going to be, the 1 is the perfectionist, is the reformer. And so you hear language shift. And that's another thing that I talk a lot about is in neurolinguistics. How do we use our language and representation and reflection of our personality? So a 9 with a 1 is going to often talk about or be propelled for things that have great perspective on how to do things correctly. You hear that word, correctly. In their eyes, that is the perfect way to do it. And ones are phenomenal about reforming anything and everything. They can make anything better. Okay. They have a tendency to be a bit rigid and inflexible in that process unless they're healthy. But the 1 is going to speak correctly. The 8 is going to speak right. This is how we do it the right way. No, this is how we do it the correct way. And there's a subtle difference there. The 8's decision making in that process is coming from the gut, and it's intuitive and instinctual. And yes, I know this is the right way to do it. I know it's the right thing. And the 1 is going to use more linear processing and more data driven. I often use the analogy of the 1 is often the one that, if they're putting a bookshelf together from IKEA, they're going to follow the instructions. They're going to read the instructions. People like myself as a 3, I'm going to look at the pictures.
Okay.
Okay, that's the way to do it. I'm going to skip the process. But when you have spouses, 9 with 1, 9 with 8, it's very important that you identify the differentiation in what your motivation is. And that is part of the Enneagram teaching, what our motivations are, our desires, our fears, our superpowers, those things. So listen to the language, and then you can watch body language too. So I use these disciplines to bring accuracy to the Enneagram discipline.
Right.
Because if you're talking to your spouse and you're hearing, this is the correct way, and you are motivated by this is the right way, look at your body language. Both of you are going to have body language that is going to be representative of that mindset.
That's powerful. So that's basically just within a couple different ways, the way that we think and the words that we use will resonate differently based off of how God created us. So it's not a right and wrong, although we just use the word right as an example. But you know what I'm saying? It's not a right and wrong, but basically it's something that is learned. And the more that we learn, the better that we can be productive and the better that we can be in a healthy space. And for relationships as well, whether it's, our business relationships, coworkers, community, coming together in community and church. I mean, all these things, the way that we view, if we can know that somebody else is telling us that we're wrong, perhaps, but in reality, maybe what they're saying is we can take it differently. And that's one thing that has been helpful for me is learning some of these differences and being able to, like I said, not take offense or not take it personally, and knowing more about myself, knowing that, we might get a troll on here that comes on here and says a whole bunch of stuff. And in the past, if you guys know, so if you have read Measuring Up, let me know, little plug here. But Sunil said that he's a recovering people pleaser. Perfectionist.
Yeah.
Perfectionist.
Yeah.
And that is something I was thinking people pleaser in my head, but then I remembered that you said perfectionist. But people pleasing is something that has been such a struggle for me over the years. And I didn't know about all of this. I learned a lot about myself, but before writing that book, and even now I'm seeing more of my innovated identity is I'm able to be who I'm created to be. The way God made me is correct in that I'm actually designed to please people. Like I'm designed to, but the motivation behind it. And that's, you talk a lot about motivation and how you teach about what are those motivations taking you in a healthy or an unhealthy manner or way. But those motivations, that's what I wrote about, not even knowing that unfortunately I was performing. I was doing something in such a way that was not being true to myself. So the difference between doing things out of the wrong motivation can really be the difference of being who God created us to be and stepping into our identity. And we might still be doing the same exact things. And that's what's crazy. It can just be one little flip switch and that motivation can be different. And yet it makes a world of difference. You can actually show up differently in the world through a business, through your ministry, through your relationships. And so thank you for, so much of that you have, you've like put another layer on of what God had been teaching me for years and putting it into such a way that like, I just hadn't even seen it before. So it's powerful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And before I forget, I want to address Sunil's, the other comment. Yes, I'm a recovering perfectionist. Just a little tip in the recovering perfectionist. I want to encourage you to change your definition of perfection. I'm a firm believer that this quantification and definition of what perfect is created by the human condition. It's created by us. I do not believe that God's definition of perfection is our own definition. And so change your definition of perfection to allow for there to be grace and imperfection in there, and mercy for yourself and forgiveness for yourself. Ones often have this voice called the inner critic in their head that is constantly telling them that they're defective, that they're wrong, they're incorrect. And it propels them to do so many great things in life because they're trying to make the world perfect.
Yeah.
However, if you change your view of what perfect is, it'll allow for some flexibility and some empathy for yourself to be present.
That's super good. I'm thinking right now, if someone knows and can tag Jeff Kramer, tag him now. He wrote a book called The Perfectionist Paradox. It's an amazing book, walking through his story of being a very tight perfectionist and how that affected his life, and working out of that and how God showed him through that. But what you just said, Ryan, is a lot of that, and how we are able to, when we choose, we can actually learn what that definition of perfection is and what God wants that for our lives. Like, what is our definition of perfect? Because for someone like me, I make a lot of mistakes. And I've learned over the last, especially a couple of years, why some of those mistakes are happening. And it is part of who God made me. And it's when I was focusing on those, it was creating more, what do I want to say? Distraction than I needed. I wasn't getting things done because my definition of perfect was not, it didn't have to be 100%, perfect, but it had to be more so. And now you're going to see, I will have spelling errors. I will have typos. I probably even typed some in here. I'm sure I have, but now because my definition of perfect is different and there's more grace there for myself, I actually have more grace for other people.
What?
What? Isn't that crazy?
Show yourself the love of Christ, and then you are able to show that love to others. That's a crazy concept.
Isn't it though? And it's something that like we can know something. And one of my coaches always says, like, there's a couple different, like there's the Hebrew way of the word no, and there's the Greek word of the way no. And, the Greeks are just like, it's head knowledge, but then the Hebrew is like, it's something different. You live it. Like you actually, know it because it's part of you. And yeah, I think that many of us are in that, Greek no kind of mentality. And so and I don't want to take this too long because I know that you've added so much value, even just sharing with with what you do, that in and of itself, when we share our calling, when we share our life's work, we oftentimes underrate it and we think, oh, it's old hat. I mean, this is what I always do. It's no big deal. But I'm looking down through here, and earlier we had Michelle Brinkley, who shared, I don't know if she even said, but through yoga, she shares her way of doing yoga in a form that honors Jesus. And that right there, when she talks about it, I learn. Michelle, I just forgot how to say your last name. Sorry, Michelle. But she talks about being a moms of addicted loved ones, helping those moms and being an encouragement because she's been there. When you talk, we understand more. We know, we have more empathy. We learn. So I just want to encourage everyone who's watching right now. I don't even know why this is coming out, but the more that you talk about the calling that God's given you, the more that you are living it out, and the more that you are releasing it into the world, the closer the next step is going to come that he's going to show you so that you can show up even more. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in such a way that that you think it's mind-blowing, because I mean, what Ryan has shared today, like I'm just assuming, right? You don't see it as like, oh my gosh, I just added so much value. Most likely because you're like, oh, I'm just talking about, like what we're doing, what I do. But for those of us who are not the expert that you are, it's giving so much value. So if anyone's watching right now and puts value down in the comments, and just let us know if Ryan is giving you value. And I know for me, even just now here listening to some things, I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like I need to go back to my Enneagram report and just ask you some questions on our next call.
Yeah, absolutely. I love questions.
I know you do. And you're so generous with just giving so much. And so even with the calls, so as I mentioned previously, so all of you viewers know Ryan is one of the coaches for the Winner's Pace Masterminds, and we're collaborating together and bringing this experience. It's a 6-month experience. And the 4 of us coaches have been meeting for the last few months and basically doing a trial of it, meeting at the same time that the mastermind members are going to be meeting, because we're members of it too. I mean, we're all going to be working together. PACE stands for the foundational elements. And remember, I'm not good with numbers, so let me look it up here. But in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, it says, let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. And all the more as you see the day approaching. Let me break this down. Pace, progress. That's the love and good deeds. God called us for love and good deeds. We're here for a purpose. You're here for a purpose. It may not be a business. It may not be a quote unquote ministry or something specific like the entrepreneurial path. And you still are called for good deeds, whatever he's called you to. But if you are someone who's called towards the entrepreneurial path, then pay attention, okay? Because this mastermind might be something that God is putting on your heart. And then in that, the next is the A for PACE, accountability. And let us consider how we may spur one another on. Now, it also tells us in, the Bible says in, I think it's 2 Timothy 1:7, that we were not created with a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. Now, we actually have a spirit of self-discipline within us. However, someone like Ryan, who is able to help uncover what that looks like individually, it's different for everyone. What is that going to look like? How do we exhibit it? How do we draw that out of ourselves? But the accountability goes further, because it also says throughout scripture that we are to make sure that we are, again, you said it earlier, iron sharpening iron, that we are calling each other out, that we are keeping each other accountable, because the day is drawing near and we need to be on our go. Like we need to make sure that we are living out that purpose. And then also the C, community, not giving up meeting together. It says we need to be in a safe community, a community that is for each other, that wants to see each other succeed. And as business owners, how often are we each other's competition? Right? Like that's not even, like, that's in God's world, there is no competition. It's
Mhm.
not the early bird catches the worm. It's like, guess what? There's like a million worms out there. It's
Yeah.
not just one worm. So we need to be working together in community and having a safe place to come to be vulnerable and to really live life together in like-mindedness. And then lastly, it says, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. We need encouragement because it's a discouraging world. And even what we've been taught, like you were saying, Ryan, with like I mentioned the word weakness, but as you teach and you coach, that there's productive and unproductive things. Our
Mhm.
world is teaching us that we're weak, that we have
Mhm.
so many weaknesses, that we can't do it. And yet we can't alone. But when we learn more about ourselves and as we encourage, we need the encouragement of one another. And we need to learn to encourage ourselves and how to tap into that.
Mhm.
Then we're able to run the pace that God wants for us. So this 6-month mastermind is going to be something to where we're helping each other find the pace that God has individually for each other,
Mhm.
up the pace so that we
Mhm.
can get it going faster and honor each other's pace in such a way that we're holding hands and we're running across the finish line together.
Mhm.
And Ryan, we had a couple of questions, so let's
Mhm.
go to those. All right, we've got here Sunil says, can Ryan explain the difference between doing it correct and doing it right again?
Yes, I can. Here's a good example. Let's say, as a perfectionist, let's say you've been at work all day long, and this is a hypothetical, okay? Husband and wife, okay? Husband's perfectionist, wife's whatever, but wife's at home, stay at home mom, and she's doing all the stuff that stay at home moms do and so forth. You come home as a perfectionist from work, and you walk into the house, and the house is clean and it's great, and you smell dinner already, and it sounds like a really great experience, actually.
It sure does.
you know, um, the perfectionist, however, this compulsion to always reform and make everything better is driven by the inner critic, by the voice in your
Mm,
head of constantly looking and being hyper diligent, on what to perfect and what to reform. You walk by the couch and you see a pillow on the couch that is facing the wrong direction. Uh-huh. So the
goodness.
perfectionist is going to have a lot of anger attached to that.
Mm,
And immediately it's going to be like, that's wrong, and then flip the pillow around, put it where it needs to be, and then is going to outwardly communicate maybe to their spouse. Why was the pillow facing the wrong way?
mm,
Okay. What's happening there is that the drive to perfect everything is leaking into your relationship, okay? And it's leaking in a way that is unproductive, okay? Because that's not always going to be received very well from the spouse. Where if we're looking along the lines of right versus correct, well, the pillow's on the couch, not on the
mm,
floor. So that would be right. Okay, that would be right and acceptable. That would be okay. So as a perfectionist, it is allowing yourself to not be consumed by that drive to make everything so perfect, everything so clinical, everything so symmetrical, everything so correct in that regard. You know,
okay.
does that make sense, Renee?
It does to me. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. Sunil says that that describes some things that he made mistakes earlier. So, and Sunil, what's awesome is that we are not. I mean, we're not just a product of our mistakes, right? Like I
Right.
know Sunil, and he has a second book coming out.
Oh,
Like this
awesome.
is a guy who has done so much, and it's easy to think that, oh my gosh, like I've screwed up because I
Mhm.
haven't known myself or I haven't had the self-awareness that's caused me a lot of issues. And we just want to make sure that we continue to look in that rearview mirror and we glance at it so that we can learn.
Mhm.
But then we get our focus right back out the front of the windshield towards the forward motion that God has us toward to run that pace to win.
Mhm.
So, and Sunil's doing that. So, congratulations.
Awesome.
And hopefully, Sunil, if that makes sense, let us know in the comments, because I know that that was your question. And then here, we've got another question, and this is a good one. Michelle is asking, can you speak a little to the history or foundation of the Enneagram system? And Michelle is the one who I was just mentioning is an amazing yoga instructor, and does that through a Christian perspective.
Before I answer that, I do want to tell about a moment for me in yoga and how it connects to my number. As the Enneagram 3 and the shapeshifter, my time orientation is always in the future. I'm always thinking about the next project, the next thing, that kind of stuff. And so where health for me is to be present. It's for me to be present and to be able to enjoy and take in what is currently happening, like this moment right here. I can't be thinking about my next meeting or, my next client, or I've got to be present here. So I used to do hot yoga, and I was in the hot yoga class. It was towards the end. We were in, I don't never pronounce it correctly, Shavasana, I think. It's the best position because you just lay there. You're on your back and you're just laying there. And the instructor, great guy, he's walking us through this kind of visualization of decompressing and de-stressing, and he's saying, clear your mind, clear your mind. I've never, up to that point in my life, I'd never had my mind cleared. Okay, it was always full of things. And I very intentionally cleared my mind. I didn't think about anything. I imagined my mind as in just a blank canvas, nothing happening. And I had a panic attack. For the first time in my life, everything went quiet, and I allowed peace to be introduced into my mind. And I freaked out over that. And so I will forever remember that, because it was a change in me, a realization that I need a discipline like that to bring me to a place physically and mentally and emotionally to where I can just be present. So I think it's awesome that you're engaged with the yoga and all that kind of stuff. That's phenomenal.
That's so cool.
I love every bit of it. When I was younger, I didn't see any value in it until I started doing it. And oh my gosh. But to answer the question,
took knowing yourself to even figure it, isn't that crazy? How things come full circle?
Yes, absolutely. But to answer the question, the history of the Enneagram personality typing originated as an audible teaching. So it was passed down through generations, and it is a spiritual teaching and connected to science. But when I say spiritual, it's not just owned, so to speak. It's not owned by Christianity or really any religion, but multiple religions have used it through the years. Greek philosophers have used it through the years, and they've used pieces of it, but it was generally taught through word, passed down through the generations. Ennea is, you've got Greek words here, Ennea for 9 and gram for diagram. Okay. And then in recent years, and I say recent, probably in the last 100 years or so, it started to be written down more. And that's where you start to see splashes of it show itself, through different teachers in religion and philosophy and so forth. Well, and then I would say probably the last 50 years or so, we've seen that it's, started to become a little bit more mainstream. The last 20, 25 years, definitely way more mainstream. And now it's quantified, and it's written down, and it's all over the place now. But it really initially started out as a spiritual discipline of communication, and then through the generations, we've kind of taken it into the quantification. And then throughout my career, I have, because to really be quite frank, if you just use the Enneagram by itself, it's about 75% accurate, and which is great, which is phenomenal, and there's real truth in it. But that's I'm not a perfectionist, but that's not enough for me. So, right. so this is where, in my own evaluation of its accuracy and my own discernment with my faith, and I was a pastor for 15 years, and so that vocational ministry application is very important to me, and it's very real and tangible. And so that's where I bring in the other disciplines, because we've got, if you, again, going back to the Enneagram 8, if you've got an 8 that is powerful and dominant and doesn't is perceived to always control things, but really just doesn't want to be controlled, well, then we add, okay, the neuroscience of emotions, to that,
Mhm.
to accurately assess if that person really is an 8, if they really connect to that 8. And we add things like, well, 8s have easy access to anger, so they experience anger before everything else, but their health is seen in their ability to have access to a full range of emotions. And so that's neuroscience. Okay. Body
Mhm.
language observation. Enneagram 8 is going to carry their posture in a very confident way, typically, more upright, chest up. If they're mad, you might see them clench their fist, or in their micro expressions, you might see a twinge on in their mouth, kind of doing that a little bit, or that, just different type of micro expressions that are going to respond, as a visual to create that congruency. So again, I want to be clear on this. The Enneagram personality typing is phenomenal. I use it exclusively when it comes to personality profile development. It has always been a spiritual discipline, but my Enneagram teaching is a little bit different.
Mhm.
A little bit
I've
different.
noticed that too. And it's not that, I mean, I've heard from some people that there's specific bad things related to the roots of Enneagram and all of this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I'm just going to share this because I think it's important. Sorry, doorbell. I also was taught that yoga was bad and
Me
that
too.
the
Yeah.
roots of yoga was so bad and that we shouldn't follow, we should stay away. And so the avoidance instead of the learning kept me from
Mm-hmm.
any of that for a long time. Now, here's what's interesting. The roots of some of these things, sure, some of those people, obviously they were trying to find themselves, right? They were trying
Mm-hmm.
to, and they're finding it through, they didn't know Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, does he use all things together for good for those who are called according to his purpose? He does.
Mm-hmm.
And does he use tools? Like, do we go and use, do we know if the disc was actually made by a believer?
Mm.
Or do we use that because we know that it is scientifically accurate in a lot of ways and that God created science? I mean,
Yeah.
so there's all these things. And then I could even go into some of the things I realized with yoga, where it's like, wait a minute. And Michelle, by the way, she said, FYI, make sure I say it right, Savasana. Does that sound right? What you were trying to say? The
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity to release the voice of ego in order to hear from Christ.
Ooh.
So how
Yes.
many times are we trying to empty our mind? And that's what I heard about yoga that was not okay, was like they're asking you to empty your mind. And when you empty your mind, like if we don't have Jesus in our mind, then basically we're allowing anything to come in. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not okay. So that was
Mm-hmm.
what I was taught. Okay. And yet I mean, through Michelle, through other people, and just being open-minded over time, I've learned that no, it's not that yoga is wrong. It's how we use the tool.
Mm.
And if we're using it for the benefit of Christ, if we're using it for the benefit of knowing who he created us to be, then wow, the power behind that, the power belongs to him. It doesn't belong to whoever created anything. Now,
Yeah.
who created the Christmas tree? Do you have one up in your house?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Most likely it
Uh-huh.
wasn't someone who, I mean, if you look at the roots of the Christmas tree.
Uh-huh.
So all these kind of things are so important for us as we learn to know ourselves. And can you remind me, is it which Enneagram is the judge that really struggles with judging?
That would be the one.
The one, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, like even knowing more about our personalities, like I go to one in health, and I don't even know how all this works because I'm still learning how more about myself, but I've been judgmental over the years, and I've had to learn how to use that in a healthy way instead
Mm-hmm.
of a
Mm-hmm.
negative way. So I love that Michelle asked that question. That was so good. And Ryan, you explaining what you did is just so helpful too, because I'm sure there are people that are wondering those kind of things. Where's the origination? Where did it come from? Why is it
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah.
But powerful stuff when we use it as a tool in our tool belt. And ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
when we are our tool belts, actually, Ephesians 6, the armor, the belt of righteousness. When our tool belt is righteousness, he gives us different tools, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
It's the way. So I've taught so many different industries. I've taught
Mm-hmm.
everything from engineers to real estate agents. To daycare teachers and managers to, I mean, so many different places and so many different industries. And one of the things that I make my, well, I want to very clearly communicate to each person that I teach is that yes, you are learning about yourself and about the human condition. And the more you know about that, the more you'll be able to navigate those relationships and communication in a healthy way. It's like navigating waters, in a healthy way. However, it can be used to manipulate. It can be used in a negative if that's where your motivations are. However, I will be very clear in this. It's only a matter of time to where if you're using these tools and these disciplines in a negative way, in a manipulative way, in a destructive way towards the kingdom of God, it's only a matter of time to where your true colors are seen and you are exposed, and others will. And here's a classic example: Enneagram 8s. They can see disingenuity from 300 miles away. And they will not put their energy into any relationship if you are not authentic, if you are not able to be honest with who you are. And so they're fantastic at not getting scammed, at not becoming victims to different forms of manipulation. I currently have like 25 8s that I am working with or have friends or so forth. They keep me healthy just alone, because if I'm not, then they call me out on it. So,
Right.
But I just want to be clear in that if anyone's trying to use these things in a manipulative way, it's only going to work for a very short period of time.
That's good to know. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. That's a really good point. And in the end, God is always going to, he's always going to win. And as we're here, he created us to be winners, and we are all called to win. Sometimes we do choose to lose, just like we might choose to use a tool in the wrong way, or you might choose to worship it and put it in the place of the Bible, or in the place of God in our lives. So we have choices to make, but he created us to win, and he gives us those tools to be able to do that. So as I go ahead and close this out, again, we are doing this PACE Mastermind. Ryan is one of the 4 coaches. I'm one of the 4 coaches within. We have a business coach, a spiritual growth coach. We have Ryan, who you just heard from. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be one of your biggest cheerleaders, and also helping to teach how to win in the world of comparison through that. So when we put all of us together, and we put those 10 people who here right now are hearing, okay, this might be for me. I need daily accountability to move forward at a faster pace that God wants me to be on. I need to grow my business, and I need to learn how to do that and get the strategy and the clarity. I need to know myself better so that I can have better relationships. I can really excel, and I can stop with the whole weaknesses thing and become more productive. Then you might want to check this out. So I will throw up, well, I won't throw up, not today, but I will put up on the screen, right before we get off of here, you can see a link. And if you are interested and you want to know more, just so you know, the webpage is a little bit iffy. It doesn't have all the corrections yet, but the information is correct. So if you are called right now to check it out, go for it. And then also, if you are like, hey, I think this might be for me, and I want to move forward, then you can apply. It is application only. We're doing that because, like I said, we're only accepting 10 into the mastermind, and it's a 6-month program. It is at the lowest price it will be, because this is the first one, and we are giving hard. We are like, seriously, we are investing so much in this, and we are so excited. It's amazing. I'm so excited about this. God's been so good and faithful. So if you are interested, there is that application there, and check it out. If you know someone who might be, and this sounds like, they're an entrepreneur, business owner, ministry leader, or nonprofit. We've already had one applicant for sure. And so and we just started announcing this. So they will go quickly, I believe, because we've been praying, haven't we, Ryan? Like, for the right people.
Yes.
I mean, there are people that are on each of our lists, and not all of them it's right for, but we've been praying for these people, knowing that God has it He knows who it is.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'm going to close with that, and you can go check it out if you're interested. Ryan, thank you so much for constantly giving value and teaching and just living out the purpose that God called for you and choosing to win at life. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so I will go ahead and put that up there. And also, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, "Wow, I don't know that that's for me right now, but I want to know more about the Winner Circle." Also, that link will be there. I will put that in the comments as well. But basically, that is something that's a membership that has been amazing, and it also focuses on those same elements of PACE. So it's www.bealifewinner.com. And there you go. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.